face-to-face level where you can actually physically talk to each other. And that is really a matter of how much people feel the scale needs to look to that, but that we can actually dialogue again, as opposed to stare at our phone and text someone and or input go to give feedback, etc. So there's a qualitative dialogic element to it, right? And that we see each other and we get to know each other. There's a repetitive, ongoing, regular nature to it. We know where it happens. We know how it happens. We are all familiar with the processes and the cultural cues. We all learn better and better how to listen to each other and how to talk, how to take into account diversity of opinions. So there's that whole other process of the culture around how we understand how we make decisions together, not just that we're physically dropped into a room together. The other thing is that we're all both, this is a kind of provocative language, but I kind of like it still, is that we all end up being both the rulers and the ruled, which is maybe not good language, but we all have as much ability to make the decisions as we do to listen to and change our minds about things and abide by the decisions that we've all made together. So sometimes we might decide things by consensus and all agree to it, so abiding by it isn't as much of a problem. Sometimes we might decide by 51% majority, and then some of us would be like, oh, I didn't get my way this time. But in the scheme of things, we do this regularly, we make decisions. This decision, I thought, people heard me, it's okay, I can move on with that decision. So we all have to be willing to both make the decisions together and then agree to continue to abide by them. That said, there has to be, to me, another fundamental principle is that we have to be able to completely revisit and question and go back and analyze those decisions. So we haven't, once now we made a decision, we never go back and think about it anymore. Okay? So we have to be able to do that. Another principle to me is that there's first of all a basis for how we're going to make decisions. How many people need to decide, how, maybe, I kind of like models where it's a mixed thing, where it's something really important we all have to decide. Where it's something like, do we need a new bicycle rack? Maybe it's okay if I lose. Or where the bicycle rack is going to be placed isn't as important as, how are we going to distribute food right now during a hurricane disaster? That might be a much more important question we'd all want to be able to decide about. So, but we need to know that in advance, and we need to know how we're going to resolve conflict in advance, and we need to know what the principles in the culture, again, of what behavior we'll tolerate in this thing. In a sense, we need to draw up some sort of non-statist constitutions or binding agreements that are kind of the bases for coming together to make decisions. Does that make, that we would, in a sense, that's sort of the first thing we would do is what happens when we're fighting? What happens when we need to make a quick decision? What happens when someone says someone can't, love someone of a gender that someone feels is, not the right gender in the space? How do we deal with these things, and what is the baseline of us feeling comfortable to be in the space together to make decisions? But from there, then, we need to be open to changing and revising our decisions and having mechanisms for reevaluating. Okay. How am I doing on time? Okay, the other thing I think we need to do as a sort of principle of these is that we need to look at democratizing the entire society. So even if we're not having one place to do something, we might want to think of different ways to democratize other areas, interlink them, so that power doesn't reside or build up in one sphere that ends up overriding the other. Sometimes those decisions might all want to happen in one space. Sometimes we might want to divide them up between multiple spaces. I know Stephen's going to talk about that. But I think that we just have to figure out where, in a sense, we want everything to be democratized, even if that, regardless of where that happens. Okay, the last few things is we have to be able to retain dissent when we don't all agree on things, so people clearly know we don't agree. I'm not actually in favor of a society where everyone agrees on things. I'm in favor of a society, a democratic form of self-governance, where we're able to coexist in our difference in ways that actually accentuates how wonderful we each are and how diverse our communities are. The last few principles are that I think it should not be, self-governance should be on models of where, while we want things on sort of the face-to-face direct dialogic method, I'm not advocating a return to small-scale parochialism, so we have to figure out forms of sharing resources, confederating, delegating responsibility in ways that don't allow power to rise up again. So how do we create horizontalist web formations of power that keep power at the local level, but allow us to do things in a regional, global, on a global level, because most of us want to retain the sense of interconnectivity and with each other. And actually I think it makes for a richer, more society, and we would be able to then have things we couldn't have if we just looked to the 20 people that lived in our neighborhood. Okay. And